We begin this weekend of rail fanning on a quiet night in Barron's, New York, with a southbound 265, with all three locomotives being rebuilds. The first rebuild is an SD60E rebuilt from an SD60, and two AC44 C6Ms rebuilt from a Dash 9. This train is bound for Chicago, Illinois' 43rd Street Yard out of AR, Massachusetts. Rebuilding locomotives is a lot cheaper than buying brand new locomotives straight up from the ground. It requires less money, and it extends the lives of these locomotives that have been rebuilt to up to 15 to 20 years. Essentially, if a railroad who bought a Dash 9 in the 1990s essentially bought a locomotive good for 40 years, but after 20 to 25 years the locomotive rebuilt, and that's where it gets its other half of its life from. A few days later, the Oneonta Superlocal came up. The Oneonta Superlocal is the nickname given to the local on this line. Usually this train falls under a symbol K71. Today he's on his way to Oneonta as the namesake, with two locomotives, both GEs. He's bringing loads up north to Lutz-Speed, and he'll take Lutz-Speed's empties south. I'm not sure what the southern scrapyard was doing at the front. We didn't get the southbound run of the Oneonta Superlocal, but we did manage to get this southbound in Sydney, New York. This is NS Train 265. The trailing unit is an SD70 IAC. This is essentially an SD70 ACE. The I in IAC stands for individual axle control, with one inverter per axle, improving overall tractive effort. Hence why NS calls these SD70 IACs. The SD70 IAC can make 4,500 horsepower under the hood, and it also has AC traction motors. But we'll look at its older cousin in a couple of minutes. But for now, let's watch 265 knock down the signal at MP 576. knocking the signal down doesn't literally mean knocking the actual signal down and out of place. The term simply means taking a signal aspect, passing the signal, in this case it's green, and turning it to red after the train passes, aka you knock down the original indication. Hence the term, knocking down the signal. "265 is at a crawl here due to a slow order in Bainbridge. He takes a couple of miles to slow down. He's got to be below 15 miles per hour for the slow order. Hence, we're a very slow 265. It took him over 6 minutes to clear the crossing here." Infinity Intermodal has been buying intermodal containers left and right from different companies. As you can see, the containers are showing their original owners through their markings. MP576 and its siding here is mostly used to store maintenance of way equipment. I've even seen the Lorem rail grinder here in the past. This is a great spot for the grinder because there's a fire hydrant not too far away from the tracks here, and it's out of the way of the busy town of Sydney. Today there's a ballast tamper here and a machine that messes with the ties underneath the tracks parked here. To prevent them from rolling away, there's derails on each side of the maintenance equipment. In case the maintenance equipment decides to move, the derails take it off the tracks and knock it off. Remember how I said we would look at 1202's older cousins? Well, here they are. This is EMD's SD70M-2, produced in the mid-2000s. There are some spotting differences between the M-2 and the ACE, mostly to do with these fans on the conductor's side of the locomotive. The fans are different on each side. The M-2, like I said, was built by EMD in the mid-2000s with 4,000 horsepower and with DC traction motors, direct current. But AC traction motors are better for maintenance and handling trains. This is what the SD70 ACE has, and the ACE produces a little more horsepower at 4,500 horsepower and meets Tier 3 emissions. The M-2s are being rebuilt into SD70 ICCs, bringing them up to SD70 ACE standards. The first ones had just been released as number 1250 and 1251. If successful, all M-2s will be rebuilt to SD70 ICCs, aka SD70 ACES specs. There's many more minor differences between the two units, but those are basically the major ones. Today, these M-2s are leading NS Train 30T from Montreal, Quebec, Canada to Binghamton, New York. This train is handled by 3 different railroads: the Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, and Norfolk Southern, all taking their fair share of turns to haul this train. Later on that evening, NS Train 264 came up to D&H. Second of 3 was an SD70 ACE, like we said, the upgraded version of the M-2 with alternating current traction motors. Unlike NS-1202, which we saw in Sydney, New York, NS-1063 here is just an SD70 ACE with no isolated axles. Another major difference between the 1202 and the 1063 is that the 1202 makes 4,500 horsepower, while the 1063, being an earlier generation SD70 ACE, only makes 4,300 horsepower. And one more difference for the road. The 1202 meets Tier 3 emission standards, while the 1063 only meets Tier 2 emission standards. The 264 is bound for Ayer, Massachusetts out of Chicago, Illinois' 43rd Street Yard, and he'll drop his double stacks off in Mechanicsville. Once again, a slow train due to slow orders. This was one of the last trains to go up the Pan Am route before a washout took place. The washout suspends all Massachusetts traffic onto D&H. So the 264 and 265 have been rerouted down the Sunbury line, and one of them even got rerouted over CSX's line to get into Massachusetts. Later, 264's sister, 265, was a mutant. And you might be asking, what do you mean by a mutant? By mutant, I mean it has 11 R's consist on top of its regular consist. The trash containers and the auto racks at the front are usually part of 11R's consist, while the shipping containers at the back are 265's normal consist. Obviously, this is all backhaul out of Mechanicsville to clear the yard. I guess Pan Am / CSX decided they wanted the yard clear and NS agreed, so they hauled everything of theirs out of Mechanicsville. And no, this does not have to do with the washout, as the washout had not happened yet. It would happen only a few days later. And as this train disappears around the bend, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you in the bend. God bless. That's what you call a mutant of a train. That is 2 trains put together.